This is much more than a piece of fabric. It represents the sacrifice, teamwork, passion, and excellence that makes up the Edwards ITF. It's no coincidence that 75 years ago this squadron was formed, and today we're completing the most extensive flight test program in the history of flight. And it's due to the people and their dedication to this profession. I, for one, am extremely proud to wear the patch of the 461st.
The first two F-35A aircraft arrived at Edwards Air Force Base in May 2010. A test site already rich with flight test legacy was opening a new chapter in aeronautical history. Within the next 12 months, the F-35 would accomplish 18 months worth of flight tests, far exceeding expectations. 2011 was labeled the year of the first. The envelope was expanded at a deliberate but aggressive rate. 2012 marked some of the highest risk flight tests the F-35 program would ever conduct. In-flight engine shutdowns and testing the maximum Mach and G at extreme flight conditions was accomplished. The pace hastened in 2013 with 9 F-35s available and an astonishing high aircraft availability rate. Intentional out-of-control flight showed the aircraft to be extremely departure-resistant and pilot-friendly while maneuvering. The first AMRAAM firing went without a hitch, as did the first GBU-12 drop. After 3 years of developmental testing, the F-35 had a large and still growing flight envelope. Fused sensors were showing promise in their ability to detect targets and support weapons. The continued high test tempo was driven by the pending U.S. Marine Corps Declaration of Initial Operational Capability. To support the Marines, the Integrated Test Force accomplished a world-class effort. A task that would normally take 2 months was completed in only 2 weeks. The F-35 made history in July of 2015 when the U.S. Marine Corps became the first service to declare the weapon system operational. That same year saw the first firing of the internal 25mm cannon and air refueling certification on tankers from the Italian and the Royal Australian Air Forces. The year 2016 would see the historical U.S. Air Force declaration of IOC, as well as the completion of envelope expansion testing. A massive weapon delivery accuracy test effort would result in an incredible 30 guided weapons release over a span of just 31 days. The firings required the support of 4 test ranges, dozens of tankers, airborne and ground targets, and chase aircrafts, as well as several F-35 wingman aircraft. The spectacular effort left F-35 program leadership, and not to mention its skeptics, in awe.
The F-35 is a game changer. It is going to change the way we fight air warfare. And the main thing that it brings is its ability to see very deeply into the battle space and survive very deeply into the battle space and take that information and that situational awareness that it gives the pilot and pass it to other F-35 as well as other platforms and other sensors, so it makes everybody else smarter and it's going to make everybody else more survivable.
7 years of rigorous, meticulous, and exciting flight testing has resulted in a machine like no other. And from the forefront, the 461st ITF has been a significant contributing factor to that success.
You know, the Edwards team has been critical in the successful completion of SDD. And you look back over the program, how many thousands of flights and tens of thousands of test points. It's really hard to capitalize. But most recently, finishing up the 3F testing that provides the real warfighting capability of this airplane is really the most impressive. With that 3F capability, our customer will be able to go to war.
As the new year came upon the ITF, the center of attention was on the 3F software and the completion of the System Developmental and Demonstration Program, also known as SDD. With the majority of the F-35 operational fleets functioning with the 3I software. The 3F software effectiveness testing will allow full capability to the F-35, branding the aircraft as a lethal weapon.
What we tested this past year is simply remarkable. We brought 3F to bear for the F-35. A lot of what we tested we can't necessarily talk about, but what we can talk about is simply how complex and intricate the missions we conducted. We had to bring in the most advanced threats, the most advanced replication of the battlefield, and we needed to ensure that the arsenal of the F-35, working with our partner nations and with other service platforms, was extremely effective in the most demanding scenarios. 3F capability is really all about interoperability. Graduation exercises on a large battlefield with additional friendly assets that we had never really tested before with prior software loads. When I think of 3F, I think of an aircraft that can go out and do maritime interdiction successfully. And we proved that. We went and worked with carrier groups for the first time. We went and worked with destroyers. We can go out to the battlefield and effectively communicate with F-16s, F-18s, F-15s. We can go work with Raptors, and we can take all the weapons that we tested and made sure that we're going to work on the battlefield. We can take those into that fight with all those other players and be extremely successful with suppression of enemy air defense, defensive counter-air, offensive counter-air, close air support, air interdiction. It is an effective and capable platform now that we have proven 3F capability. When you think of 3F, you got to think about the weapon capability that it brings. The British Paveway 4 ASRAAM weapons, AMRAAM, JDAM, AIM-9X, JSOW. We proved that it can attack any target, anytime, anywhere in the world. What we bring by completing 3F is a remarkable airframe that can integrate like nothing before it. But we can't forget that what this team has accomplished over the past 7 years has provided capability like 2B and 3I jets that are already forward deployed. They're already operational, ready to meet the challenge of the battlefield.
Yeah, the F-35 is truly a game changer, and we see that every single day. One of the things that we try to emphasize as we introduce this capability into the theater is how we make other platforms more lethal and more survivable on the battlefield. The F-35 functions as a quarterback on the battlefield. Everything that this airplane is optimized to do makes other elements, and not just aviation elements, but the entire Marine Air Ground Task Force more lethal and more survivable on the battlefield. And our allies see the same thing. In the Pacific, we're lucky we get to work with the Japanese, with the Koreans, we get to work with the Australians, and they're all partners in the F-35 program. They are trying to glean lessons learned from us as we have brought the aircraft forward, and I think that the entirety of the F-35 fleet as it's actually fielded eventually will be a huge game changer with regards to the lethality and survivability of both us and our allies in every possible scenario you can imagine in wartime. I followed the airplane through the initial stages of developmental tests in SDD when we were truthfully struggling. Now I look, and every day I walk out on a flight line and there's 16 F-35s forward deployed in Japan. And that all happened in an incredibly short time frame. And it was the collective efforts of folks in the production side, the design side, and then ultimately the flight test side that have fielded this airplane forward. And now we're literally at the tip of the spear, and I couldn't even imagine that we'd be in this position. And I find myself just incredibly lucky to be involved in that breadth of experience that I've had, and I look forward to seeing what this airplane is going to be able to do for us as we move forward.
You know, the F-35 is not just another airplane. It's really going to transform the way the air forces of the world fly and fight. I mean, you think about what just F-22 had done flying in the skies of Syria. Now add hundreds of F-35s, all connected, 5th-gen capability in a coalition force. It's really going to be amazing. Nothing like we've seen before.
The road to success was never a smooth ride, and the accomplishments have not come without sacrifice. But delivering a combat-ready software to the F-35 fleet after only 7 years of developmental testing is extraordinary. With much of the 2017 year focused on perfecting mission systems, there was a fascinating undertaking occurring with the flight science crew with the Norwegian drag chute.
AF2, the workhorse. The jet behind me has taken the F-35 to the extremes of the envelope. It is specially instrumented to go supersonic, as fast as we possibly can go, both high and low altitude, to pull the maximum G-forces that the F-35 can take in order to validate the envelope of the F-35. This airframe is nothing like we've encountered before. Its job is to make sure that the F-35 airframe can sustain those extreme environments. Well, it's also been modified to be able to do the Norwegian drag chute testing. So it's undergone mods for the past 8 months to put that Norwegian drag chute on the back of the A variant of the F-35. After we did the mod here in-house, we began the testing earlier in the summer. It was working great for about 4 or 5 flights. Then all of a sudden, snag. Was it a dangerous situation? No. We had mitigated for it. Our test team had planned for something like that to happen, and our pilots, as well as the test control room, knew exactly what to do in that situation. Recovered it, and then the engineers went to work. They went in and figured out the airflow behind the tails right in front of that engine was unknown, and it wasn't modeled correctly beforehand. They went to the drawing board, they used their expertise, like we always do in the ITF, and they solved the problems. The team was able to, while they're developing that fix, they were able to still go out and test with a drag chute that may get snagged on the engine, but they still went out and did the testing that they needed to on wet runway. They did crosswind landings. They did the first ever 3-point employment. They did the first ever 2-point employment, all heavy weight and low weight, different airspeed. And now they've gotten to the point where now they got the new design and they went forward and conquered the next phase, which is making sure that new design is also working effectively. We work closely with our partners, but we are responsible in the ITF for testing this new technology. We're developmental testers, it's what we do. We're going to be the first ones out the door to make sure a system like this is safe and effective and meets the requirements the Norwegians have.
To authenticate the chute's proficiency, a team of 90-plus individuals and AF2 had deployed to Eielson Air Force Base in Alaska. A detachment of considerable undertaking, all while performing daily tasks and ongoing flight tests.
AF2 is headed off to Alaska. It's going to that extreme environment. Our test pilots, our control rooms have been prepping for this deployment for months. They're going to go up, ice the runway in Alaska, and they're going to characterize how the F-35 is controllable under these extreme conditions. This has never been done before. It's taken the next step of this testing where they are landing on icy runways at Eielson Air Force Base. And they're ensuring that the F-35 is controllable under those conditions, just like they're going to have to deal with in Norway. We're not only doing the drag chute testing at Eielson, we're also doing all icy runway testing for the entire F-35 fleet at Eielson Air Force Base. The team has worked hard, they've developed a solid, safe plan in order to execute that test, and they have been successful conducting icy runway testing.
As 2017 comes to a close, the 461st can look forward to the coming years as new increments of improvements will need to be tested.
So as the SDD program comes to a close, it's really just opening a new chapter in the program to a follow-on modernization program that will start adding additional capabilities to this airplane. And I see that going on for the next 40 or 50 years. Much of that testing will be here right at Edwards Air Force Base.
Finishing the system developmental and demonstration program flight test was an accomplishment like no other. The importance of the completion has commenced an alliance among the F-35 community, air superiority.
We are creating the preeminent fighter of the 21st century, a fighter that will shape and define our battlefield for the entire free world for decades to come. We have made history over the past 7 years here at Edwards ITF. What we've done has never been done before. And as we continue testing the F-35 and bringing in a new capability, it is Edwards Air Force Base, ITF, and the 461st Flight Test Squadron that is writing that history.
The professionals who make up the 461st are remarkable individuals from all walks of life. Their contribution has never gone overlooked.
It's a selectively manned unit, which means that they only get the best of the best in the Air Force, whether they be contractors, civilians, or military. The Department of Defense has recognized that the F-35 is a very, very important program. We couldn't field the airplane and do what we do in the program office, what Edwards does for us.
We just keep at it, even when things get tough. You know, that's what flight test is. It isn't smooth. And the team here comes together like no team I've ever seen before. And it's remarkable. Everyone in the Edwards ITF should be so proud of what they've accomplished over the past 7 years.
This team, the 461st Squadron of deadly jesters, are and always will be the front line of F-35 testing.